Hi guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another retro RPG and the end of another poll. And the winner with some 37% of the vote is Cyborgs for Deadlands Hell on Earth. And I'm really glad because I do love me some Deadlands Hell on Earth. I think the setting's absolutely great and there's so many good ideas in here, especially the Cyborgs book. But we'll go over the desktop in a second. Now, I was joyed to see that Cold Hand Dead Hearts came joint second in the poll this week, because it's been hanging down at the bottom of the polls every week. It's been getting seen no love ever since I started these way back in January, but it was nice to see it getting some attention, even though it didn't win. Now, I'm going to carry on rearranging the options, as that seems to have shaken things up a bit, which I'm really glad of, even if it hasn't really changed things too much, because I don't think Terror Counter Terror for Millennium's End was going to get that much attention, even though my previous Millennium's End videos have received a lot of interest. People have been really intrigued by a game which isn't known a lot about these days. But let's go over to the desktop and have a look at Cyborgs. So this is Cyborgs, the 1999 sourcebook for Deadlands Hell on Earth, which had only come out the previous year in 1998. It includes rules for the titular Cyborgs, but it also expands the rules for the Harrowed. You see, in Deadlands Hell on Earth, it's a magical type environment. There is this magical radiation permeating the Wild West, and one of the effects on that is that dead people can come back to life. And they are called the Harrowed. Basically, a spirit called a Manitou manifests in their body and starts puppeting them around. Now, this is part of the whole setting, because Deadlands Hell on Earth, there's the evil Manitous who are looking for the doom of civilization. So the more heroic your character is, the more likely he is to become harrowed, because the evil spirits will want to take his body and cause evil through him. So who was once a hero will now become bringing doom to the world. Now, the way these hook into the cyborgs of the title is that technology never developed strong enough to replace pieces of humans with cybernetics. People would just die. But Harrowed are already dead. They're being powered by the spirits. So basically, just bolting big mechanical objects into their bodies didn't bother them because it wasn't going to kill them. It also hooked in that they would install a thing called a spirit fetter, which would feed from the Manitou and power the cybernetics. So they came with an inbuilt battery as well. 2 pluses. But let's have a look at the back cover, and we'll carry on with that as we go through. Looking for a few good deaders. On the cratered, smoking battlefields of the last war, dying for your country wasn't always enough. The bodies of many good soldiers never reached the morgue. The chosen few were given a new life, of sorts. They were arrived as Harrowed, the living dead, and implanted with state-of-the-art weapons and electronics that transformed them into the ultimate killing machines. These grim ghost, steel, and silicon warriors undertook the most dangerous missions and fought the fiercest battles. Even though the war ended over 13 years ago, some of these flesh and metal monstrosities are still fighting it, slaves to the computers implanted in their grey matter. Cyborgs contains everything you need to build one of these cyber soldiers from the ground up. Inside are complete rules for creating a cyborg hero, including 70 new cyborg systems and weapons, and a random rules of engagement system for determining how much of your deader's original programming remains. For those less mechanically minded, there are also complete rules for creating more traditional Harrowed heroes. Mechanized or mummified, it's your choice. So grab some tools and head into the lab, brainer. Maybe your hero can be one of the few, the proud, the cyborgs. So that introduces the concept of the AIs, because the idea that they were bringing dead heroes back to life and bolting cybernetics into them was part of the story. The other part is that as the war went on, they needed more cyborgs than they had dead heroes. So they started just getting any undead they could get and bolting cybernetics into them. But they controlled those by adding an AI, which means the undead went from being controlled by a Manitou spirit It's being controlled by an artificial intelligence which would make them follow orders. What makes it even worse for the heroes now is the spirit fetters are starting to break down, as are the AIs. So they're in control of their body, but they've got some of the spirit leaking through out of the spirit fetter, and some of the AI programming remaining. Which means they've now got 3 voices in their head, as well as, or 2 other voices as well as their own. I've stayed on this page for a moment because logos Charles Ryan, because I mentioned Millennium's End before there. Just Charles Ryan, an absolute hero of roleplaying. So we've got the posse territory, because Deadlands books are, as always, broken down into 2 sections, because they include the bit for the players and the bit for the GM. Now, I've never been sure about the practicality of that, because if you're a player and you're buying a book, it's not like you're not going to read part of the book you've paid good cash for. You're going to browse through it. Anyway, start off, as many Deadlands books do, with a story, Dead Man Walking. So we've got a Harrowed cyborg telling us the story, explaining about cyborgs. What is a cyborg? The heart of darkness, the spirit fetter which powers everything. The big brother, because they've got the artificial intelligence riding shotgun. The very early models didn't have one of these, because as I mentioned, they were all volunteers. Later, as recruiting methods changed, AIs were installed to ensure the cyborg's loyalty and force them to follow certain program behaviors. Now, when I read through this originally, it reminded me of the 1970s version of the Marvel superhero Deathlock, where he had a computer in his head. And I believe they carried that on into the 1990s version as well, where the hero had to speak to the computer and convince it. You know, it would be like, you can't endanger this body, it's a military asset. And he'd be like, well, we need to save American citizens, that's part of our mission. And he'd have this argument over the programming, over whether he should be heroic. And that's kind of what the AIs remind me of. Anyway, we've got body replacement, the mission, going into how the wars were fought, the Anubis project, the exterminators. These early model cyborgs were primitive by today's standards, but they got the job done. The cult of Atheron. Then we're on to Deaders in Society. In the US, the Harrowed were non-people. And looking at those pictures, what I just said about Deathlock, these very much remind me of Deathlock in the 1970s, because he wore the sort of military outfit. He had the big optical eye replacement, and he had an American flag on his chest. This, I think, is very much inspired by Deathlock, which is no bad thing, because I did love that comic. One of my favourites. We've got the arms race, so how other countries started to do the same. Cyborg death matches. And we're still on the section where this is all the story of the undead hero who's telling us all about them. So this is all from a point of view, which is one of the strong points of Deadlands, because it can introduce all these things and then in the Games Master section just go, well, that was false. It's an interesting story, but that's just what people say. It's not actually the truth. What else we got here? CySOG, Cybernetic Special Operations Group. The SEAL Teams, Cybernetically Enhanced Arcane Life Form, CEAL. Border disputes. Just lots of the background here. We're onto a different cyborg, telling his story. Junkers, people who can use arcane magic to modify equipment, who are very useful to cyborgs for repairing them. Throckmorton and the Combine, Death's Head Legion, just lots of background stuff here. Then we're on to the rules, so how to make a deader, the unlife of the Harrowed. So, common powers, they've got their death wound, because even though the Manitou heals up the damage done to the body and allows you to carry on walking around, the death wound you received never quite heals. So if you are hung, then your neck is always crooked because your neck broke. If you were chopped up, hacked up by muties, has scars like a jigsaw puzzle, and so on and so forth. Perhaps you've got a big chest wound which constantly weeps with blood. We've got decay, because they are zombies. They need to eat flesh and they can rebuild themselves, but they are rotting away. And smell it. It suggests drinking alcohol to cover it up. Strangely, undead do not need to eat, at least if they want to repair any damage their carcasses have taken. Theirs is a diet of meat, fresh or long dead. It doesn't matter. So they eat the meat, and that gets absorbed to repair the damage to their body. Regeneration. Just the standard abilities. Sex. It just can't happen. Sleep. Well, they need a few hours of downtime. We've got the rules here. Get the all clear. Make a hero. Kill him. Whose mind is it anyway? Now we've got the Manitou spirit. What kind? Whether it's a legion, so a bunch of lesser spirits. Dominion. Once you know how big the beast is, it's time to see if your dead can control it. Cyber systems have a drain rating. This is the amount of spiritual energy needed to power the device. The energy normally comes from the Manitou. Rules of engagement. So the rules of engagement which allow the AI to let the deader act. Or the Harrowed do as they want. As long as they're following the rules. We've got Harrowed hindrances. So, aura of death, angst, just different disadvantages. Rage. And then we've got the cyborg hindrances. Burned out. Decrepit. Unfettered. So your spirit fetter has been shot up and the Manitou is causing problems. This is something you can gain during play as well. Virus. Your dead have picked up a nasty computer bug. And you've got the edges, so your AI companion. Discrimination, because basically you're a zombie. Dealing with the AIs. Overload, just the different systems for how your cybernetics work. Then we've got some archetypes. So an infiltrator, one which basically looks human. A light can, somebody with minor modifications, maybe a replacement arm and some other. A heavy can, well, basically you can see that he's not much more than a head. And then the drone, who is basically controlled by the AI. There's not much of the person in there left at all. Powers of the dead. So we're going into the powers of the Harrowed. Now, the Harrowed themselves, when they're made into a cyborg, basically lose these powers, because these are the powers given to them by the Manitou. And the Manitou is being completely drained when it's in its spirit fetter to power all the cybernetics. But if the spirit fetter gets damaged, then you can start to regain some of these abilities. So it's an advantage-disadvantage thing. Yes, there's a spirit now trying to take control of your body and cause harm to humanity, but you get magical powers. So that's a plus. Charnel breath, claws, cremate. Just lots of magical abilities related to death. Glow bones, jumpstart, nightmare, soul eater, zap. Then we're on to the cybernetic equipment itself. So it mentions that, again, because they're a Harrowed, they don't need to sleep, but they do need to shut down from time to time to allow their repair systems to give time to act. Internal systems. You've got antenna, balance booster, big ears. Basically different advantages, cybernetic implants, command and control, a CPU, chameleon abilities, cybernetic hands, a data jack, a cyber skull, cyber torso, so you can replace parts of the body with more armored versions. Facemaker, to allow you to disguise yourself, always found in infiltrator cyborgs. Frogman, GPS system. And then you've got some weapons here, lightning bolt cannon, self-repair units, Samson, heavy-duty servos, pistons, and joint actuators to the cyborg body. Shockers, sonar, spirit blasters. Because, of course, with Deadlands being a magical world, even the cybernetics can have access to magical powers. That's the kind of world we're dealing in here. It's weird science. We've got external systems, things bolted onto the body. power ram, utility pack, water jets, armor, and then we've got the list of weapons: chainsword, Colt M22 Reaver, different guns, all mainly just called by the series of letters. They're not very interesting to read out. And they've got computer programs, because you are a mechanical device. You can run programs if you've got the CPU. Junkers and cans, so junkers can power stuff off the spiritual energy in a cyborg, making them very interesting to junkers. And then we're into the martial territory, so the GM section, which basically goes through the background story that the NPCs gave at the start of the book and give you the truth on it. Now, it goes through there the details of Blackleaf Correctional Facility and what the truth is inside it. The Big Mac. Fort Apache, just detailing everything. The orbitals. Cyborgs in orbit are not only doing fine, they're flourishing. Death's Head Legion. Making cyborgs. Pre-Harrowed. Breaking Way. Sometimes a hero's will is so strong that it can overthrow a Manitou's dominion and keep it from doing something positively atrocious, at least for the moment. So we've got the rules there. And then we've got the Deadlands Dispatch, which is a short newsletter type thing, giving you an update on what's happening in the Deadlands world at the time this book was published. So it will hint at things in other books and lead into later books. So, needful things, gremlins, a profile of an NPC. Oh, no, sorry, it's a profile of the writer. I apologise. I thought it was giving us NPC there, but it's not. It's giving us the author. John Hopler has been with Pinnacle since it began in 1996. Since that time, he's worn many hats. He's currently Hell on Earth brand manager and does most of the writing and designing for this line. And in the back, we've got Welcome to the Funhouse, Monsters, Muties and Misfits. 188 pages of the worst abominations the Wasted West has to offer. Available July 99. So, that is Cyborgs for Hell on Earth. I really do like all the background that this gives. The Harrowed are an absolutely fascinating idea, bolstered by the fact that you can use it in play. It's not just a source book which your players have to have chosen, oh, I want to play a zombie. You can have a player who dies, and then you can bring them back as a Harrowed. Although you're not likely to then have them cybernetically modified, that's not beyond the realms of belief. But the Harrowed themselves are a key part of Deadlands, which make this a very, very useful book. But, as always, I think I've whittled on for quite long enough. Thank you very, very much for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment below, as it does me massive favours with the YouTube algorithm. But, as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.